So with that, it is my great, great pleasure to introduce Carolyn Miles. She is the president and CEO of Save the Children. Most of all, she is the mom of 3 beautiful children, 2 boys and a beautiful baby girl from Vietnam. Please help me in welcoming Carolyn.
Was pregnant 3 times, I had 3 babies. I mean, what more could you ask for in your life? Even with all of the care that I had, and even with the monitoring the babies all the way through, I still had fears. So it's hard not to think about women who don't have all of that care and how scared they must be and how big their unknown must be for them.
Oh my God, before my child was born, I had countless fears. Oh my God, I used to say to my husband, I'm not doing this. And he'd be like, what do you mean?
We all go through this phase where we're like, what am I doing? How did I get myself in this?
The fears I had are probably the same fears that most pregnant women would have when they are facing childbirth. But the fact that I had a great doctor throughout the pregnancy had really put me at ease.
I'm grateful for the midwives who delivered my 3 children. I'm grateful for the prenatal care that I had during all of my pregnancies.
I needed to have a C-section without knowing to the last minute, and I learned that there are women in Vietnam in rural area could not make it if they found it at the last minutes because they don't have a good and proper care.
Every mother just wants the best for their child and wants them to be healthy and strong and happy and just have more than they had themselves.
I think every mother shares something in that before you have a baby you're one person and after you have a baby you're another person, and it's like a light switch and you can never, it's a light that when you turn it on you can never turn it back off.
The first time I saw my child, I was completely overwhelmed, just being in awe of this little child in my arms.
The first time I saw my child, I felt every cell in my body just burst with love.
I felt just immeasurable love. The kind of love that I never imagined was possible.
I think when I was looking at my son, it was really just this overwhelming feeling of, I'm so in love with you that I can't breathe. And I just want you to always be safe. I want you to always be happy.
I really want all the mothers around the world would have the same experience like me.
I hope that pregnant women everywhere are given the opportunity to give birth safely.
I wish for them the kind of security and health care that every mother deserves.
When you see these impoverished and less fortunate women next door, around the world, across the world, wherever it is, it's unfathomable that that still exists today. Just how we have to really unite and do everything we can to make this better.
So I think all of us can relate to those first moments when you met your child and you had this feeling that my world has definitely changed. I'm Carolyn Miles. I'm the CEO and president of Save the Children. And I've had the opportunity to have many, many life-changing moments while with Save the Children, but I'm not sure that any are as profound as those moments when I've looked into the eyes of my 3 children, Keegan, Patrick, and Molly. We spend a lot of time at Save the Children on lots of little moments that make a difference for kids, whether it's making sure that they get an education, making sure they're protected from harm, making sure that they have the food and the shelter that they deserve. But none of this actually matters if we don't start at the very beginning. each of the moments I had with my kids were very different, from a very high-tech hospital to a small, tiny orphanage in Vietnam. But I think those moments, I felt what every mother, what every parent actually feels, which is this fierce determination that I am going to do everything in my power to make sure that this child has the best life that they can possibly have. So while mothers and fathers share those feelings all around the world, the circumstances in which moms live around the world and in which they give birth and what the moments of that birth are like are completely different, completely different. So this week, leading up to Mother's Day, we launch our 14th annual State of the World's Mothers report. And this report just came out, as I said, this week. And we look at where it's the best place to be a mom and where it's the toughest place to be a mom. We look at 5 things. We look at maternal mortality, child mortality, educational status, economic status, and political representation of women. Those are the 5 indicators that we use. And what we found in this year's report is that at the very top is Finland. So Finland is at the top, and it's always the Nordic countries, by the way, that are at the top. They do a very good job for mothers, so it's always the Nordic countries. At the bottom, at 176 in the index, is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And most of the bottom countries, the bottom 10, are all in sub-Saharan Africa. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, 1 in 30 women will die from pregnancy-related complications. But this is not just, so these 2 countries are on the same planet, but they're in vastly different worlds. But this isn't just about the developing world. This is also about right here in the United States. So this year's ranking, and a lot of you will probably be surprised at this year the US ranks 30th in this ranking. A lot of that is driven by child mortality rates here in the United States. I talked about those 5 indicators. And in new research that we just did this year, we looked at the first day. And shockingly, more than 11,000 American mothers will lose their baby on the first day of life here in the United States. That's a pretty shocking statistic. So we have got to focus on newborns, and particularly on that first day. I was just in India about 2 weeks ago. And I do want to mention this. 1 million babies who die on their first day all around the world, which takes me to India. So I was just there about 2 weeks ago, and I went specifically because I wanted to see what was happening in India. And I got a chance to meet this beautiful little girl, Aisha. I went to one of the biggest public hospitals in India, where every mother is admitted, regardless of her economic means. And I met Aisha, who's about an hour old in this photo. And it was fantastic when I handed her back to her mom. Her mom was just beaming, as we all would be. But it was particularly welcome to be there with Aisha because I had spent most of my time in the slums of Delhi meeting with moms who had not been nearly as lucky as Aisha and her mom. So 300,000 babies die on their first day of life in India. 300,000. 300,000 mothers and fathers that feel the pain of losing their baby on that first day. A pretty horrendous statistic. So this is why the report looks again at that first day, at that newborn, that first month, but particularly the first day. But there actually is some really hopeful things about this. The things that are really behind this are things that we know how to change. And we have already changed mortality rates for children under 5. So if you look at the mortality rate of kids under 5 between 1990 and 2011, they've gone from 12 million children dying under the age of 5 from preventable deaths to less than 7 million. Now 7 million is way too many. So we have to do more for under 5s. But if you look at the newborn mortality number, it has stayed relatively stable. We had some great dips in kind of early 2000s. but it is a harder number to move. If we are going to save the lives of kids under 5, we've got to do more on this newborn number, the kids that die in the first month. So that's really where the focus needs to be now in terms of child survival. And what we found in some recent work that we've been doing at Save the Children, as we focused more and more on the newborns, is that the reasons that newborns die are really in 3 areas. The first is complications because of prematurity. So babies just being born too soon. Babies are born too soon. The second is due to infections, and infections that we can actually fight. I'll talk about the interventions in a minute. And the third is other birth complications, which if you have trained birth attendants, even if you're out in a remote area, can really help with. So these are the 3 things that are killing babies in those first hours. There are 4 very low-cost interventions that can make a huge difference for newborns and young babies. And the great news about this is because 98% of these deaths are in the developing world, the great news is they don't take high-tech hospitals, they don't take lots of money per intervention, they don't even have to be delivered by doctors. They can be delivered by trained health professionals. So those 4 life-saving solutions, let me go through each of them and say a little bit about them. The first one has to do with infection. Many babies become infected through their umbilical cord. So using a clean razor blade to cut the cord, which in many countries is not what's happening, and a small little tube of antiseptic cream to put on the cord can save the lives of these babies. In Nepal, 63% of women give birth at home. So 63%, the majority of women are giving birth at home. Enabling those women to treat their own children with this amazing little medicine can save many, many of those lives. And in fact, excuse me, in Nepal, this medicine goes under the Nepali word for shield because it's protecting babies. I think it's a fitting name for this heroic medicine. So that's the first intervention. The second intervention has to do with fighting infection. Simple antibiotic injections that can be available and dispersed at health clinics by trained health workers, not necessarily doctors, can save the lives of babies. This shot costs about $2, and we estimate that it can save 500,000 babies in that newborn period. $2 a shot. This little boy is Nathaniel, and he is from Ethiopia. And he was lucky because the health worker in his village, he was born at home, the health worker in his village diagnosed his fever as something that needed attention. He took him to a local clinic, he got this $2 injection, and the next day he was a different baby. So this can really save lives. The third intervention has to do with preterm babies. I talked at the beginning about complications around preterm. And preemies, oftentimes one of the biggest issues is that they're not breathing. So their lungs are not developed enough to work when they're born. So promoting lung growth, actually, when moms go into labor, preterm labor, if they have these steroid injections, again, they are not expensive, it's 50 cents. If they have these steroid injections, the lungs will actually start developing very quickly during labor, and the baby will be able to breathe when they're born, or be able to breathe with a little assistance. So this is something that, again, is going to make a big difference. In Uganda, 14 out of 100, so 14% of women are giving birth preterm in Uganda. So the government now is rolling out this intervention to make sure that every woman who goes into preterm labor actually has this injection. And it'll save tens of thousands of babies there. The final intervention is again about breathing. A lot of babies aren't breathing when they're born. So that's actually a pretty normal thing, that babies aren't breathing. And so you've heard, we slap the baby on the back or we rub the baby. A lot of times that will just rubbing the baby will most of the time get the baby to breathe. But sometimes babies need a little bit of help. And this simple device, which costs between $5 and $6, can be used to resuscitate those babies. So this baby that you see in this picture is Nisa, and she was born in Indonesia. And luckily, she was in a clinic where there was a health worker who had been trained how to use this simple bag and mask, and they were able to resuscitate her, and she survived. So these 4 interventions are things that can literally save 75% of those million babies. 3 million babies die in the first month. 1 million babies die on that first day. And these 4 low-cost interventions can make a world of difference. So before I conclude and ask you to do some things about this issue, I just want to share one other moment with you that was so important in my life. And this was actually before I came to Save the Children. I was in the Philippines, and I was driving. I had my 2 sons. My husband was with me, and we were driving from the airport. And my son was about 6 months old. I was holding him in my arms. And I looked through the window, and I locked eyes with another mother who was begging beside the road. She also had a baby in her arms. My baby was no cuter, no smarter, and no better than that mom's baby. But my son would have every opportunity in the world, and her son would have none. And by the time the light changed, my life was actually on a different path, and I came to Save the Children. And I have the opportunity every day to work on these issues for moms and babies, and to use my moments to do that. So now I'm going to ask you to use your moments to do this. In this room and on this video live stream, we have literally thousands, tens of thousands, I hope, people who can actually do something about this issue. Bringing awareness to the fact that saving newborns is really important and that it is doable is a really critical thing that you can help us with. So I know we're all here to drive social media. I know you're all driving social media as I speak, I hope, but you really can do something about this. So whether it's to drive people to the report to read more, whether it's to talk to them about some of the statistics that I just talked about, tweeting, blogging, all of those things really helps tremendously, because this is an issue, as I said, if we do not solve this issue, we will not get to this goal of saving the lives of kids that are dying from preventable deaths. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the folks who put this together. I think it's a fantastic event, and thank you very much for listening. Thanks.